Thank you for joining us today. Hello, and welcome to From Lansing with Love. I'm your host, State Representative Leslie Love. Every month, we discuss a topic with interesting guests. I hope you will find this program both informative and insightful. You may know that February is Black History Month, a time where all Americans reflect on the significant roles that African Americans have played in shaping U.S. history. The celebration started in 1925 with Negro History Week, initiated by historian, author, and journalist Carter G. Woodson. That expanded to Black History Month in 1976 with a proclamation by President Gerald Ford to, in his words, honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. We have with us today my colleague and great friend, State Representative Sheldon Neeley from Flint, the chair of the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus, where I also serve as the executive vice chair, and we're gearing up for the annual Black History Month dinner celebration in the Capitol. And I'm excited because Thurston High School Choir from Redford Township in my district will be performing. So, Representative Neeley, welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to finally get an invite to your show. It's been a long time. We've been serving together. We're on into our 5th year now.
Yes.
And this is my first appearance on your show, so I'm so happy that you've granted me the opportunity.
And I'll let you know, you're my very first elected that's been invited to the show. Not even my favorite Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist, has made it to the show, and you are my first elected to.
I'm sure after he
here.
hears about this, he's going to be your next guest elected
Right.
to be on the
Right.
show. But I'm so happy to be here to share this time with you and your viewers about what's happening this month here in the capital city, and also what we've been doing as a Legislative Black Caucus.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things, Sheldon, right off the bat, and I introduced you as my friend, because when we came into this very unique experience, I definitely recognized the kindred spirit in your work ethic, your compassion, and just tenacity to take care of the people back at home in Flint. Tell me, how did you get involved in politics and running for state rep in particular?
Well, much like, when people think about how we all get here, we're elected with the constituents' agenda, and more often than not, most of elected officials adopt the incumbent agenda. But people like you and I, with our kindred spirits, we really work hard for the people, and you have been doing a fantastic job for your constituents. I mean, you have been doing a really fantastic job of your yeoman's work at being a legislator. But I started out in the city council in the city of Flint. I served there for 9 years as a city council person, and then many communities of color was infected with this virus called the emergency manager, right? So many communities of color down the I-75 corridor, Detroit, Pontiac, Highland Park, and Flint were infected with this virus. And so I decided at that time that I would run for state representative, because when an emergency manager comes into your particular area, all elected officials are put to the side. And so to get over and above that particular, tyranny, I had to run for state representative to get above it, to try to help out the constituents, not only the city of Flint, but every community of color throughout the state of Michigan.
Right. Well, I call you the king of Flint in admiration. But tell us, because I know viewers would want to know, we hear a lot about the Flint water crisis. You've had international celebrities, local celebrities, the state of Michigan has come in to try to help. Can you give us summarize and update on that situation?
Well, it's definitely a crisis in confidence, right? Residents have lost confidence in elected representatives, not only, from a level of the governorship or all around in the city of Flint. It's just a crisis in confidence, and it's a traumatic experience for residents inside the city of Flint. We talk about the water issue, but we don't talk about the traumatization of individuals psychologically, right? So there needs to be more remediation in that area to restore confidence. If you came to my city, and you've been there to visit with me, if I offered you a glass of water that came out the tap, you probably would not drink it from what you see, right? And so, and that's the feeling of those residents that live there. Even though the science is saying the water is better, things are being replaced, the lead lines are being replaced, but we still have to get beyond the traumatization and the crisis in confidence in that community. And so, but moreover, that virus that had been affecting communities of color is still alive and well. We have to figure out ways to try to provide a prescription for that thing. And that's going to be a job that you and I have to do together.
Right, absolutely. I remember when the crisis first happened and the Michigan Democratic Caucus went to Flint, and we were part of this caravan of folks who brought bottled water in the middle of the winter, going door to door. There was a truck, we had filters and cases of water, and the guys would carry the cases of water, and I would carry the filters to the door, and meeting residents and hearing their stories, and that what you said, this crisis of confidence, is that the term you used, was a lot of fear, and how do I know for sure that this is it? So there's clearly a lot of work in terms of that. We'll have to do. Do people still need to continue to send water to Flint?
Yeah, people are still drinking bottled water, inclusive of myself as a resident. I drink bottled water. Filtration systems are still in place, and we're still asking people to use filtration systems until we are absolutely sure that the water is safe to drink and consume for human consumption. But there's no bigger fear for a parent. With the most important thing in your life is your children. To be able to, for a child to ask mom or dad for a glass of water before they go to bed, and the fear of that child waking up less intelligent than they. And so we have to really realize what is going on, and the trauma that's been inflicted upon this particular place in this geographic area. They can happen anywhere, and now we're having a crisis with PFAS contamination in our water across the state of Michigan. So it's going to require a lot of work from people like you and I, and all like-minded thinkers throughout the state of Michigan that wants to join us. And we talk about communities of color, and as we transition into Black History Month, we need to figure out ways to band together to get over and above this crisis, and especially looking back, it gives us a look forward of how we're going to be able to accomplish those things, because we were able to overcome some great challenges throughout our history.
Right, clearly. And how does this affect the economy? If someone may have been thinking to go to college there at the university, or buy a home, or open a hair salon, how is this all affecting that? And if you see about the arc of the turnaround time.
Well, the thing about it is a lot of collateral damage that can be done with a crisis such as this, right? Collateral damage and collateral benefit. And then you have exploitation of dollars. More than $500 million has hit my region, more than $500 million. And some people are monetizing a crisis like we've seen in other places throughout history. But part of the collateral damage is like restaurants. If you come to restaurants, one of the things that they give you complimentary before you even order your meal is a glass of water. Food is prepared with water. And so you have a lot of customers or consumers that's questioning the safety, their safety and health when they go to local restaurants. And even if you get a shake at a ice cream place, or a Slurpee at a local convenience store, all is used with water. And so, but most of the business inside the city of Flint has been remediated for that. Businesses have put on filtration systems on their systems, and so college, one of the biggest things in the city of Flint, people don't know this, Leslie, but I'm gonna give a secret for your show.
Okay.
Flint is
breaking news right here.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Flint is the college capital of the state of Michigan. We have 4 universities with Baker College, Mott College, University of Michigan, Flint, and Kettering University. So we have 4 colleges of higher learning inside of our community, and there are more college students inside of the city of Flint than anywhere else in Michigan. And so it varies in ages, because you have people returning to college, but we have more in population in colleges, college students inside the city of Flint. So I just got to toot Flint's horn.
All right.
And so it's, I just thought I'd put that out on your show.
Well, you got a lot of smart people and eager folks ready to change the world and make a difference right there in the city of Flint. Right. And you'll need those boots on the ground as we move forward too. It's just the top down. It's also, we just emerge together and work on this crisis. So now it's a new term. We're in the 100th legislature. You're a third termer, and you have been, I'm going to say, elevated to the Ways and Means Committee. Tell me what's the significance of that is, you think, for you, and how that will play a role in this legislature.
Well, the Ways and Means Committee, many lay people don't understand what our committee assignments are when you talk about what happened in the district. So we want to educate them up to what we're talking about. In this term, they have what you call super committees. So you have 3 committees that are considered super committees on the policy side, and Ways and Means is one of those super committees, meaning that all other committees, when they eject a bill out of their committee, it goes into a super committee before it can be ejected onto the House floor for consideration from you and I and the rest of our colleagues. And so I was blessed with that opportunity, and we're going to serve all communities well as a member of one of 4 Democrats on that committee. But it takes all of us, because the reality of it is, Leslie, that I get one vote, you get one vote, and I really don't think one vote is more important than the other, but we have to really dig in deep to do our due diligence as legislators. And that's one thing that I can really compliment you on. You are always at your desk reading and doing great things. And if I have an additional question or something, I can always stop by your desk.
This is about you, Representative.
Okay, well, I'm just right.
I appreciate that. And what committees did you serve on in your other 2 terms?
Well, I served on transportation in my first term. I also served on local government, coming from a local government background, and health policy. Health policy was very important to me because we have health challenges inside of my district, and I wanted to be there. And also, when we talk about communities of color, we have healthcare disparities throughout the state of Michigan. When we talk about African American people and people of color alike, there are definitely healthcare disparities, and I wanted to make sure I made some level of impact. In my second term, I served on tax policy. What do I know about tax? I pay a lot of them, right?
Right.
So we had to be educated up about serving on that policy, on that committee. My Thrive came through that committee, the Good Job Pact. So God has placed us in a good position to be able to elevate, job recruitment, retention inside the state of Michigan for being on that committee. And also, I served on health policy in my second term. And this last term, I only get one committee, but this committee meets a lot, 3 times a week. And it's Ways and Means. And so we've yet to get in there to start working it out to see what that looks like. But it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work.
This is just the beginning of the 100th. We have the new governor, at the top of the ticket, full of Democrats. And you're on a very significant committee in that process of how we'll move legislation through the House. And I know this is my Black History Month show, and we're going to go into your role at MLBC. But before we go into that segment, I just wanted to know what maybe some of your priorities or what you would like to see in this last term, understanding the context of you being a leader out of Flint, one of the most dynamic and effective leaders that I've met in that group. And so what do you see for your city with this new dynamic of the governor being in place, with your new role? I know we only have less than 24 months to get this done, but what do you hope to see before you get out of here in terms of your city?
Well, we need more partnership and more coalition building. And it's just not about my particular district. My district is important to me, just like your district is important to you, but the state of Michigan and all Michiganders within is important to all of us. And we have to figure out ways to bridge the gaps and then find commonalities in a way that we provide a better quality of life for all Michigan residents. And so getting back to ground zero, especially with the communities of color, Michigan Legislative Black Caucus is not just about African Americans, but it's every member of color from the Senate and the House that's a member. And we have historically more members of color now than we've had ever, right? And so and more female members of color than ever. So right now it's a very exciting time, and then we got to find ways to really impact those communities to whereby quality of life can be enhanced. And we talk about some of the priorities, or where our priorities are as Michigan Legislative Black Caucus. We set forth, we talk about, I just mentioned healthcare disparities. The infant mortality rate in communities of color, Black and brown babies, die 3 times more than anybody else. And so, so we have to look at those ways and to try to figure out to enhance quality of life for all residents.
That's right. So we'll be back with more of this, because not only is he handsome, but he also is a great fighter and has been on the front line on a lot of issues regarding our state police. And we'll come back and talk about that, as well as what the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus looking forward to in our priorities in the 100th legislature. It's time for us to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. welcome back to From Lansing with Love. We are here with State Representative Sheldon Neeley of Flint. Thank you again for being here, Representative Neeley. So as we were leaving the first segment, coming into this, we're just setting up to talk about Black History Month and the 100th legislature and what we have planned. Last year, you did something pretty significant, and I wanted to go back as we do in Sankofa to remember our past as we move forward. And you recognize our very first African-American elected in state legislature. Tell the viewers about that.
Well, we want to say we did it as a group, right? Because it was a collective effort that we did it as a Michigan Legislative Black Caucus. And one of the things that we do is, as a group, we host a lot of children coming into our capital that was brought here in 1879. The Capitol that we sit in was built in 1879, less than 2 decades after the emancipation of African Americans in this country, and bringing those children here. And as they look at the walls of our Capitol and all those individuals that supposed to have done so much in our history of Michigan, there were no images of color on those walls, no portraits of any persons of color. And this is post the first African American president. And then so we talked about it, had a discussion about it, and then we moved forward in trying to make sure that we diversify those images on the wall. And so together with the members of Michigan Legislative Black Caucus, yourself and others, we sought out and researched and came up with William Ferguson, the first African American ever elected in the House. And it was elected in 1893. And the story is a magnificent story. So I encourage your viewers to go out there and learn about William Ferguson out of the city of Detroit, elected in 1893. Now, think about the mode of transportation, getting from Detroit to Lansing. It had horseback, or I don't know how you do it, but imagine the challenges that he had. But it was his first engagement with the state was he filed a public accommodations lawsuit in 1890 because he refused to sit in the colored section of a restaurant. People will remember Plessy versus Ferguson, which was in 1898, or Brown versus the Board of Education, 1958 or 59 in that era. But the first public accommodation lawsuit that was brought was actually a Michigan case. It was a state case. It was William Ferguson. He lost in the lower court. He appealed to the state Supreme Court and won his lawsuit outlawing segregation. And at that time, the Supreme Court was housed in the Capitol. And we thought it was fitting to get his portrait commissioned, and we hung it right outside of the chamber in which he won the very first victory in the state of Michigan. And that's Michigan Black history. Right.
And speaking of Michigan Black history, we're like I said, we are getting ready to celebrate the 100th Black History Month here at the Capitol on the last Wednesday, which I believe is February 27th. Those who are listening at 5:00 p.m. And we welcome. It's free and open to the public. It's a great program, and it's meal served too. But I want to ask you this: why do you think Black History Month is still relevant?
Now, it's very much relevant because we still have a long distance to go to accomplish. We have to look back, and then we have to move forward. And it's relevant because we have to remember all the challenges that we came through, and we know we have to move forward. And so it's relevant to recognize African American history because it is a part of American history. We are a country that we are some of all of our parts, and African American history is a very strong thread in American history, and we have to remember that.
Absolutely. It is. And I think sometimes it seems like the focus is oftentimes on racism and the civil rights movement. But also there's been significant accomplishments, or achievements, inventions that African Americans have made and that helped our nation. And so those kind of stories get lost, and sometimes people, particularly at this time with the president that we have in office, who speaks a lot of diverse adversarial language, that it becomes often a argument or a discussion about race and culture, and then how does the African American story or history story play in this context now? So how do you feel that this coming, this program that we'll have this month will help move our story forward and help educate people?
Well, it's about self-defining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not allowing others to define you or who we are as a community of people. Not saying that that we're less than, and that's somewhat of the message that has been delivered from high places, right? And so, but we be able to identify and who we are, and make sure people understand clearly through a good lens who we are as African Americans and our contributions to this country. And African American history does not just start in American history. We have a deep rooted history beyond the borders of the United States, and so our history doesn't start in slavery. And and we have a long way to go. And with our program, and it was the intellectual property of one of our great members, about we're going to be celebrating our jurists, right? And so part of the criminal justice reform and making sure that we advance our ideas and our thoughts is celebrating those who are judges throughout the state of Michigan of African American descent and other minority descents and their contributions as we move forward.
Yeah, this is going to be a wonderful program with our keynote speaker, Judge Cynthia Stevens, who is known as a firebrand and super social justice champion back in the Detroit area. But right now, we are creating history as we speak. Mm-hmm. Just in the 100th legislature, having Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist be the first African American ever elected as our Lieutenant Governor. I recognized this year, as I sat on the House floor, and I said, look at all of the African American women in the House and Senate who are now serving. And never in history, we have 12 women of African descent combined between the House and the Senate currently serving. We've never had 12 members all at the same time serving. And so even that in its dynamic, and we didn't even notice until we looked and said, wait a minute. It's more of us, and they're not just from the city of Detroit. So we've got folks from Lansing and Pontiac and Southfield. So we're branching out and growing, and then I think we even have more members in the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus. Correct? Correct.
This is historic. We have a historic number right now, which is 28 members, right? In the scope of things, when you look at 148 members, 28 is really not a huge number, but it's a significant number for people of color, right? And then having Lieutenant Governor towers above all of the rest Lieutenant Governors only because he's 6'8", right? It was a joke about his height. Tell him I said it, okay? But he's that's a fantastic thing that we need to celebrate and recognize, and making sure that our young people can actually look at reflections of themselves and to see themselves in positions like that you and I serve in, so we can make our contribution. It's very important. If you take away hope, if you take away dreaming, if you take away opportunity, you take away the future. And so we cannot celebrate our past without really recognizing what we have to work toward.
Absolutely. So speaking of what we have to look forward to work towards, explain to our viewers what the significance of the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus and its priorities this year. And the fact that we are not just a group of African American or Black legislators, that we have expanded that reach to all members of color. Everyone is welcome to be a part of it. But, the driving force is that, and they represent diverse communities, from the very wealthy to the severely struggling.
Correct.
And so why and how is the MLBC still relevant? And what is its priorities, you think, moving forward?
Yep, and we're still framing for this new session, this historic centennial session that we're in, our priorities. But we're going to be looking around healthcare disparities, as we talked a little bit about before. Also, we can talk about education. If you don't know, you cannot do. And so we need to bolster our education so kids can actually have a great opportunity and a great outcome to be good, productive, hardworking citizens. We have to look at the mass incarceration rate. In the state of Michigan, jail sentences or prison sentences are 4 years more than any other state in our country, and excessively sentenced individuals, nonviolent crimes, being excessively sentenced. We need to really look at and revisit those type of things. And then we have to talk about environmental quality, right? We talk about PFAS, we talk about lead in your water, but we talk about air quality and how that impacts all of us. And so those have historically been some of the priorities that we have set forth in our past session that we're going to be moving forward, looking at building onto those things, trying to make sure that we enhance the quality of life for residents.
But you've also been a real champion about our state troopers and law enforcement in particular. And from the issues from last year to what we're trying to plan with the new administration moving forward, so that you hear on the news, even just recently, a police officer back in Detroit who pulls over a young lady and then decides to try to demean and disrespect her by videotaping it. A normal stop becomes very politicized because someone exercises extremely poor judgment and puts it on camera. But we as state legislators kind of look at just in general our law enforcement interaction with communities of color. Can you talk about what you've done around that?
Yeah, and what we do, we try to engage the processes the way they police communities of color, right? And with the state trooper engagement throughout the state of Michigan, it's like de facto martial law, for the lack of a better term of it. And martial law is where you have a law enforcement agency inside of your communities that you have no control over. And so when you have a local police force like Detroit has, Flint does, Saginaw does, and then you have a high infestation of law enforcement agencies that you don't have any control over, you have to really figure out how they're policing your community and to have some input on it. And so some of the things that we've done with Michigan State Police is that we help change their policy about high-speed pursuits in residential neighborhoods, because they were doing it differently in communities of color than they were doing it in other communities not of color. And we had a lot of innocent fatalities over the last decade, people dying. Not people that were engaged in any criminal activity, but we had to really work hard to try to provide a remedy so that would change. And thankfully, they no longer engage in those policies and procedures that cause people to lose life.
Yeah, and I know that the MLBC, the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus, under your leadership, has done a lot of work towards that. The upcoming program where we recognize jurists, because Michigan has the largest population of African American judges serving on the bench on all levels of government. So that's really huge. And then also the work that the caucus has done around recruitment and training and demands for that within the state police department. So I thank you for all your advocacy and all the members who work on that. And so as we wrap up our program tonight, and I know, like as I said in the beginning of the show, you're entering your third term. I'm sure you have wonderful things on the horizon. But what would you like your legacy to be as the chair of MLBC? You'll now have served you were elected and re-elected to be the chair. What would Representative Sheldon Neeley's legacy be?
Well, I would like people to recognize me as a man of faith, right? Bringing people together, the coagulant and change, and then leaving the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus stronger than I found it, to pass it on, to continue the growth that we're going to do. And I'm confident that we're going to do that. That is going to be our legacy together. And I just want to know, are you going to invite me back to the show?
It was so much we could talk about. I need to invite you back. Are there any highlights from during your term serving as chair that you're particularly proud of?
Well, bringing things together is a highlight for me. And also what we've done with the William Webb Ferguson portrait, that was historic and changing. But just all the work that we do collectively is a highlight. And I just enjoy
you're way too modest.
People ask me, and this is just, we wear this pin, and only 148 of us get this pin, and we have to wear it to identify where we work. And you know that I wear a cross pin, but I want to show people who I belong to. And so it's modest in my faith, so I'm here through the grace of God, and we always want to recognize that. And I don't always have to say it, but I want you to see it.
That's right. Well, just know that I recognize your kafu. You're very good at what you do, and I appreciate the organization that you brought to the caucus, your ability to raise funds and to assemble us in a way that our power means something in the state of Michigan, and it's recognized by the governor. And then when the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus enters the room, people pay attention. So thank you for your leadership on that. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. I'd like to once again thank my guest, Representative Sheldon Neeley, for joining us. And thanks to all of you for watching. If you have an idea for a show, please contact my office, and that contact information will be on the screen. So until next time, be good to yourself and each other. And with that, we're all clear and out of here. Goodbye.